Hello and welcome to another episode of the Inter Show. This week, following on from two victories, one last weekend against Cagliari and the other, a big one against PSV away in Holland. Lads, I didn't see the match against Cagliari, so I'm going to leave that one to you. I did, however, watch the match against PSV, and I think we can be enthusiastic that the team is at least going in the right direction. I don't think it's there. I don't think it's quite there yet, but things are slowly coming together. Going back to the Cagliari match on the Saturday evening, Anthony, what was your overriding impression of that match?
Thanks, Andrew. I really enjoyed the Cagliari match. I feel like it was our first proper professional outing of the season. Despite the 3-0 away win against Bologna, there were a lot of cracks in that match, and that was only our first win of the season. And I think we all agree the win against Tottenham was more majestic and magical than anything technical or logical or rational footballing wise. So Cagliari, I think, was an impressive performance in a sense that, we didn't get everything right, but we also managed to go back to the basics. And when you look at our squad compared to Cagliari's side, you really only need to nail the foundations and the basics in order to get the 3 points. And that's what we did. We got the 3 points, and, grudgingly, I would have preferred us to put the second goal away a lot earlier because, at 1-0, even if you are comfortable in dominating, there's always that risk of having that one goal come back, which we saw Cagliari do. But the most obvious handball of the season so far, it was good to see that decision get made really quickly and efficiently. And, I enjoyed the Cagliari match probably mostly because it was just a logical, straightforward win. And Spalletti got his substitute spot on. I think when he injected Perisic and Brozovic in at around minute 65, it was a solidifying substitution. He could have given them an extra 20, 25 minutes rest for the Champions League match, but I think he did the right thing in making sure those 3 points were wrapped up. So the Cagliari match, it was a lot easier on the heart, I think, than most of the fixtures so far this season, so I enjoyed it.
And a lot of the newspapers were talking about Martinez and Icardi linking up. What's your feeling after the Cagliari match on that one, Alessandro?
I don't know. I don't see any problem with Icardi and Martinez if they're playing together or if they alternate on the field. I don't see any problem. Last year, everybody was complaining about being Icardi dependent. This year we have an option, and it sounds like it's a problem. I don't see any problem at all. It's just it gave us another weapon. That's all. And about the game, I also want to say that when I saw the team, at first I thought Spalletti was crazy. But at the end of the day, he knows what's going on better than us. And and that was a very good game. And I'm happy that Albert is showing what he can do.
And Leon, do you think we're starting to see the real Nainggolan now?
I think after the Champions League game, I would have to say in the Cagliari game, he kind of disappeared for most of the game. He came on, towards the end. But what I liked about the team is, we didn't fall apart because one player wasn't performing up to his level, which I felt we got into a little bit last year with Perisic, or when one player wasn't, performing at his greatest, the team kind of fell around him. And now I see the team just kind of picking up the pieces and picking up where one player might be putting them down. So, but Wednesday's match, he really showed what he can do.
And one thing that stuck out to me about Wednesday's match, it's standing out more and more to me all the time, is I really think that Brozovic is growing into his role as that kind of regista mediano role. He didn't get a great mark in La Gazzetta dello Sport. He got a reasonable mark in Corriere. But I thought that he was absolutely fundamental on Wednesday, and he's very quickly becoming one of my favourite players, because I think he's really the only one that gives a sort of metronomic aspect to our match play, our team, and to me now against PSV, he controlled the match. He covered so much ground for a start. He took the ball away from PSV on a number of key occasions, and almost every attacking move, I felt anyway, almost every attacking move that we had began with him. I don't know. What do you think of that analysis, Alessandro?
Yeah, it sounds correct. I've never been in love with Brozovic's style, but recently he is fundamental for us. He reminds me a little bit of the Thiago Motta kind of player, and I'm sure he still have some growth potential. As soon as he gets 100% in form. I think he's still a little bit tired, especially at the end of the games. You can notice that.
And Anthony, he particularly got criticised for the PSV goal by Gazzetta. Do you think that was fair of them, or do you think that they were looking for a scapegoat for it? Because
definitely. I'd say
impression.
the second option. Yes, and yeah, I agree. Look, you can see at the moment of the goal itself, obviously, he doesn't apply as much pressure to the shooter as you would expect from someone dropping into a defensive role in the defensive formation. But I simply put that down to him having so much to do on all fronts of the 90 minutes, whether it's offensively, backtracking to get into small places to cover where Vecino wasn't able to cover. I think Brozovic has been given a pretty strenuous task through many of our matches this season when he plays the double pivot with Vecino. This isn't the first time we're saying this, and many Inter fans around the world are pretty much in agreement that when Brozovic partners up with Vecino, he has a substantially larger workload to do. So definitely Brozovic can be made the scapegoat for being the one closest to the action and not closing it down. But I think it just speaks volumes about our defense in terms of being able to adjust to a quick style counter-attack. In the first 45 minutes, that's where PSV tended to look dangerous. So to answer your initial question, I don't put any of the blame on Brozovic in general. Obviously, in that short little clip where he fails to close down or put any pressure of the shot, it's very easy to make him sound like a scapegoat. But no blame on Brozovic for me at all.
And Leon, I think one player that we probably would be expecting more from, and we're not getting it at the moment, is Perisic. What would you agree that he's underperforming, first of all? And if you do agree, what would you see as being the reason for that?
Historically, he's done this. He's kind of trailed off. I don't think it's really, everyone's kind of saying the World Cup hangover. He's kind of been like this every year where he's trailed off. Thankfully, we've been able to step up in the meantime. And I think every good player has some games where they're not, has a string of games where they're not performing up to the level. So I think we just keep playing him and keep having our faith in him. And eventually he's going to come through and go through his hot streak again. But he's historically been kind of a streaky player where 5 weeks he's just kind of disappears. And the next 5 weeks he's getting 2 goals a game and an assist a game.
And if I was to just sort of bullet point ask the three of you for this short period of the season so far, if I could ask you to pick out one player that you would describe as being the most vital towards our progress so far, I mean, I've already said I would pick out Brozovic. If I just quickly rapid fire asked you that question, Anthony, who would you pick out?
It's a very hard question. You're kind of backing us all into a corner here. And up until, I'm still going to be annoying and not give you one because I think De Vrij is fantastic for the free price tag. Asamoah for free. I still get tingles about it thinking that there was a $0 fee attached to both of those players. But after the weekend, and due to my insanely biased agenda against Antonio Candreva, I love Matteo Politano, and I think he is a huge breath of fresh air on the right flank. I think he was fantastic against PSV, fantastic against Cagliari, and I see no reason to leave him on the bench if he is fit at all. So I'm actually going to go with Matteo Politano.
And Alessandro.
I'm going with Asamoah. I think on the left side, he's the player we were looking for years.
And Leon.
You know, not the boring answer, but it's still our captain. It's still Icardi. You know, those two touches he had in the Champions League to score those 2 goals. Those goals came from nothing. Those goals came from possibly a missed cross and a long ball down the field that he perfectly one-touched to put behind the keeper, put beyond the net. It's, you know, he's been the reason why we're here. And he's the reason why we keep being here.
Very true.
And I'm just gonna, so that our listeners don't think that we're living under a stone or in a cave. We're not going to go into details on it on this show. This is an inter-show at the end of the day, and the news story is so serious that I don't think it would be correct to deal with it on what is essentially an audio fanzine. I mean, if you live in Ireland, the UK, France, the USA, or any one of the nearly 200 countries in the world, perhaps other than Italy, you'll have been aware all week that there's a major news story breaking concerning Serie A. If you live in one of those countries, I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about. If you live in Italy, perhaps thanks to the media there burying its head in the sand, you may not have known about it until today, as they prefer to plaster themselves with ridiculous sendings off concerning managers celebrating goals. But just to say, yeah, we are all aware of it. But for those who want to know more, news sources like the BBC, RTE, CNN, TF1 have been covering it all week, and they have plenty more information on that. And that's basically all we're going to say. Just so that you...
Can I give a hint? It's not about Marotta.
It's not about Marotta.
It's the same area, okay?
Yeah. But we'll leave it at that, because, as I said, with it being an audio fanzine, I don't think it's the place to get into sort of serious news or potentially serious news stories. Going forward this weekend, we go to Ferrara. We play SPAL, a team that's going to likely be battling against relegation at the end of the season. Are you confident going into this one, Leon, or would you be nervous?
No, I'm very confident. I mean, we're playing great right now. SPAL, I mean, it has 9 points, but it beat I think Parma, Bologna, and it beat Atalanta. But I believe that was when they were sandwiched between there's 2 Europa League games, and they were trying to win that game. So while they have 9 points, the quality is not there. We should be beating teams like SPAL every single weekend.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Now, Alessandro.
I don't know. I'm not so confident, honestly. But if I have to pick one team at the moment, I don't want to play against is SPAL. They're gonna be just all back defending, waiting for our mistake to do the 1-0, and that's it. Of course, I hope we're gonna score 2 goals in the first 15 minutes, and that's the end of the game, or 3 if we don't want to repeat the Torino game. But I don't know. I think this is the worst time to play against them since right after there is the international stop, and if we lose or we don't perform well enough, I don't know what the newspapers and all the media are gonna made up.
And Anthony.
Yeah, I'd have to kind of share Alessandro's sentiment about it. I think I'd rather go to the new camp this weekend to play Barcelona than go and play SPAL. To be honest, it's just the way we are and just the way that we carry our motivation and our form. But that being said, I'd have to echo a little bit what Leon said. I think that this SPAL team this season, they have a little bit of rejuvenation and a little bit of confidence. And because of those 9 points they've collected, I think it might give them a sort of a flawed feeling of confidence or a flawed feeling of entitlement, that maybe they won't completely sit back against us and maybe see their season as more of an opportunity to try and get a point at home against us or get a win at home against us rather than completely sit back. And if that's the case, I'm actually a little bit more confident this season that we'll get the 3 points, whereas last season I would have been ready to engrave a 1-1 draw tattoo into my arm.
Yeah, my nervousness would come in from the fact that lately Inter kind of remind me a lot of Liverpool over the last so many years, in the sense that, you know, I think we have a right to be confident when we're playing against the big teams that will attack us and will try and beat us. And I think in those kind of games, we're more likely to come out on top than not. Not every time, but I think that we have a right to be confident in those kind of games. It's the kind of games where we can go. You know, you can go away to the likes of SPAL and drop 2 points, possibly even drop 3, just because we struggle so much to unlock those kind of teams. As I said, like, you know, the likes of Liverpool, that they seem to have changed it around now, but the fact that they could go and beat, say, Manchester United, but they'd lose to Watford the following week. It's that kind of feeling that I get with Inter at the moment. And the longer the game goes on, the more and more nervous I'm going to be, unless we get that early goal, and then SPAL have to attack us, and it opens the game up. And then I think that we'll go on and win, probably quite comfortably. But it is that early goal that's the key. I'm really looking, as I said earlier on, I think we need to look at Perisic to really up his performance. It's perhaps an overhang from the World Cup. I think Brozovic had it, although I am raving about Brozovic at the moment. I never thought I'd say that, but I think Brozovic suffered a little bit of a hangover after the World Cup, and I think it's true to say that Perisic is probably still suffering from that. Hopefully he'll get his form will come back at some point, preferably before Christmas than after it. But I'm sure it will come back at some point. If, other than Perisic, Anthony, if you were looking for one player to up his performance, who would you be thinking of?
Ooh, that's a tough one, because the last few fixtures have been very, very, very confident in all of our players. Despite his good performance against Cagliari, which was actually probably his best performance I've seen in an Inter shirt, I think D'Ambrosio still has room to improve. But however, with the injury to Versalico, I think he's giving 110%, and as I said, he's improved a lot. Besides Perisic, I'm probably going to say Handanovic then. I think once again against PSV, even though the finish was fantastic, and we all sound like broken records, he makes an appearance on every single podcast, Handanovic, but I think that he still needs to improve a little bit more, show a little bit more flexibility, or at least attempt to dive or move a muscle or blink an eyelid when a shot comes off outside the box. And I think a lot of fans are still divided down the opinion of whether or not we need to replace him sooner rather than later. So despite his amazing save against PSV, the bicycle kick in that last couple of minutes, I still need to see more from Handanovic this season. But if that's what I'm saying, Handanovic, then I'm actually pretty confident saying that it's only Handanovic and Perisic that need to improve for me at the moment.
Alessandro.
Yeah, I was writing on the page of the fan club. Sometimes Inter reminds me of one of the sinking boat of the cartoons, where the characters start to try to block one hole where the water is coming out, and then other tube pops out. It's something like that when some player is like performing well, other two are underperforming. And against PSV, we saw Handanovic and Ambrosio. They both had some problem, and I don't know. I think those two players need to improve quite a lot, since now the other players are performing very, very well.
And Leon.
Not to sound negative again, but I think it's got to be Nangolan. We bought him to break down these smaller teams, to be a creative presence in that midfield, when the teams are sitting back. And he did great Wednesday, but, he's got to show up and perform in that 35 million euro price tag and start scoring. He's been kind of absent the past couple games, in Serie A. I think he needs to perform and take some leadership there.
And in terms of just the little pieces that we like to add to the show, the women's team actually starts its campaign, its Serie B campaign, off against Roma Decimo Quarto is the name of that team. Looks like Quattordici to me, but apparently that's their name. They start at 1:30 tomorrow. In terms of, just very briefly on that, in terms of Sonning wanting to develop the whole package of Inter and the women's game, I've spoken about the women's game in the past, and I think it's something that does deserve mention every now and again. With Sonning trying to build Inter as an overall package, do you think that that is a line that they should be looking at? Do you think that it would add to the overall image of Inter if it also had a successful women's team? I'll go back to Anthony.
Yeah, I think it will absolutely help for many reasons that are so logical we don't even need to go into on this podcast. But not only for that, all the work that Sonning is doing, in my opinion, has been fantastic from the moment that they've taken over. I don't know all the information, but I keep seeing articles and snippets that, the imminent takeover of whatever stake Torhia has left is inevitable, that Zhang will take over as the 100% president. But other than that, you can already see from the social media influence to the website, the Inter.it website, to all the communication and the involvement with communities setting up around the world, that Inter has become its own brand now. They've kind of dropped the whole Inter Milan notion, and it's just become Inter. It's a brand. It's out there. It's almost as out there as any of the other bigger clubs in Europe. Now it's just time for us to perform on the pitch to get our own stature. So in regarding what you said, I think it's a brilliant idea to get the women's team involved, and basically anything extra that Sonning keep adding is only going to help us in every way, shape or form. So I'm all for it.
Alessandro.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't really have anything else to add. It's 100% spot on.
And Leon, I was actually saving you to last on this one for a particular reason, because certainly in this part of the world, the image is that the women's game is quite big in America. It's quite successful. And I'm just wondering, from the point of view of an angle of if there is a female soccer market in America, would having a successful women's team put Inter in a position to maximize on that?
100%. And that's how I was going to answer the question anyway. It's kind of like, you're broadening your horizons, and I think the U.S. game has grown so much, not only because of sports become popular, but because the U.S. women's team has done well, and it's kind of involved, not just men wanting to go to the bar and drink and watch the game, but it's also involved everyone. If you go to soccer games in the U.S., it's 60-40, 65-35 men versus women, which I think is a huge difference if as opposed to if you went to a game at the San Siro, or even worse, like a Napoli game, the draw that this gets to other people is great. And I think other teams should follow suit behind it and grow the sport in the league, because attendance numbers could really use it.
I would say that it's one thing. I have a number of issues with the Premier League, not least of all the bluster that comes with it, and the constant thing with Sky in this part of the world that it's the best league in the world, and it kind of rubs me up the wrong way at times. But one thing that I will say about them is that they have got the family aspect of their product working very, very well. And I think that if you went to a Premier League match and then you went to a Serie A match, you'd notice instantly the difference between the families that are attending in England, and it's a real sort of men's environment in Italy still. I think there is elements of that changing, perhaps slowly, but I do think it's changing. But it's certainly a driving force behind the success of the Premier League. And if Sonning are as forward thinking as I think they are, and as committed to the club as buying 100% of it would suggest that they are, then I think it is something that they will target going forward. Just looking very quickly at a history item, we actually, going back to the early 1960s, the 4th of October 1961, so only a day behind from today, Inter actually played SPAL at home and beat them 4-1. Gori scored first for SPAL, then Bolki scored 2. Late one on the 88th minute was the winner. Looking back, actually, in 1959, he scored 2 goals again against SPAL. The interesting point about this, perhaps, is the fact that whilst he played over 100 games for Inter, he only scored 10 goals, 4 of which came against SPAL. Let's hope that somebody who doesn't score that often comes up with a brace tomorrow, or on Sunday. Sorry. I'll just mention the fact that I do have friends that are big SPAL supporters. SPAL actually has an ultras group called Vecchio Irish that they base themselves in an Irish pub in Ferrara. They sing Irish songs. They take a lot of Irish sort of memorabilia to the matches. They actually have a very provocative Irish slogan on the scarves, and I've been in contact with them over the years. Friendly group of guys. Now I hope that they win 36 matches this year and just lose the 2 to us. That'd suit me fine. Other than that, I think it's time to wrap up, and I'll leave by saying thanks to Anthony, Leon and Alessandro, and Forza Inter.
Forza Inter. Thanks, guys. Till next time.
Cheers, guys. Forza Inter.
Forza Inter sempre. Thank you.